Hi, I'm Nelson Ford at the Gunsmith, and this is my favorite part, Q&A. The first thing I should talk about, because people are all very interested in the little Bolo holster, and I get them from Silver Creek Saddlery in New Mexico. Guy's great. He's actually a saddle maker. He's worked on a lot of movie sets. He and his horse, Miss Piggy, were on a lot of sets. They did a lot of. They did. He was on Deadwood. He was actually on Back to the Future Part 3, and he was the cavalry soldier carrying. Cavalry soldier. I always say cavalry wrong. Soldier holding the flag, and he's riding Miss Piggy. Anyway, he makes these little Bolo holsters, and he outfits them complete. Has all the hardware. And this is for a Magnum. I've got a little 22 Magnum in there right now. I have a little 22 long rifle, and he leaves the end of the leather bare, and so I always take whether it's a 22 short, 22 mag, or 22 long rifle, and I put them on the end of the leather, so they're dangling down at the bottom there. But he puts the spots on for me, and of course this is Jesse James' favorite pattern, and he knows all the different patterns and tells you what they are. But it's Silver Creek Saddlery in New Mexico. Anyway, there's the mystery solved on that. To the questions. Oh, one guy asked, what mods should he do for a hand-me-down gun? You know, what would be the perfect mods? And I tell everybody the same thing. The first thing you want to do is shoot the gun, and you want to make sure that it's reliable and has a trigger pull you can live with. Those are the first two. Once you get past that, reliability, trigger pull you can manage, then you go to sights, and there's just a plethora of sights. I like Bomar adjustables, which are now made by Kensight, because I'm the guy that has to take out a dozen guns every week and put them on paper, and then to try to dial them in for customers. And so adjustables are great when they're, hammer-on, fixed sights. I can't control the height as much unless we're putting them on. Then we'll go ahead and sight it and make sure it's right, and then drill it for a gold bead or whatever we need to do. Excuse me. I know it's a long shot, but if I was going out today to buy a gun that I wanted to hand down, and I wanted things like checkering and a tight slide, CZ is sending out guns with tight slides. The Colts made by CZ, they're stellar. Pick one up, try to shake it. People always say the old guns, the old cars, they had bias ply tires and carburetors that were hard to adjust, and loose slides on gold cups. They would rattle and make noise. The new ones are stellar. They're wonderful. If you go buy a new Colt Trophy, sometimes you can find them around $1,400. Sounds like a lot of money, but if you just save up, instead of buying a bunch of guns this year, buy one gun. The Colt Trophy comes with the Bomar adjustable, comes with a dovetailed front sight. The slides are tight, comes with 25 lines per inch checkering, which is great because 20 is too coarse and 30 is too fine. It's almost like sandpaper. And then they also put a steel mainspring housing on the back of the trophies with 25 lines per inch checkering to match the front. They come with grip safeties and commander hammers, and they're wonderful guns. You don't need a match grade barrel. If you sit down on a bench and lay your hands over at 50 feet, those guns will shoot like this all day long with decent ammo. And so that's what I would do. I would not buy a government model and throw a beaver tail on it instead of ambies and a match grade barrel, and you're going to be at $2,500 before you know it, and you don't need to spend all that. But it's a great idea that you're thinking about getting a gun to hand down. I would make it a Colt. They have a pony on the side of them, and they were the first. They're a piece of history. Jason, what causes lead shavings to accumulate on the vertical impact surface on a 45 government model 1911, where the link rests in the frame? This is with a cart barrel professionally fit by a nationally recognized pistol smith. I don't know that I've ever seen lead shavings accumulate on a 1911. On Smith revolvers, you know, you need 11-degree forcing cone cut, and it's got to be between the gauge surfaces. And we had one come in the other day. It was shaving off lead going every which way, and all we had to do was put a forcing cone cutter in there. But I can't imagine where the lead's coming from. The bullet goes up and gets in the barrel. I think I have seen 200 grain Hensley and Gibbs that had been fed into a barrel and then retrieved, you know, to disarm the gun, and then fed in again. And it had a little at the end of the conical at the bottom. It was peeling off lead or showing an area where the lead was being indented. I don't know about lead on 1911s. I haven't seen it. I do know that bullseye, which we currently can't get, you fire one round, you could fire 1,000 rounds. There's not one flake of lead in your gun, or one flake of powder in your gun. You fire one round at 231, and the whole gun is full of powder. And so there's, you know, I do know the powder differences, but I don't know where lead accumulates. You can get carbon buildup, and that's, I think, what you're seeing. Your next Q&A, maybe talk about what type of work an average guy can do versus what an actual gunsmith should do. Clean your guns with Hoppy's number 9. If you put a good fitting bore brush down your bore, you're doing more than 99% of the people on the planet. But just changing your grips on a 1911, you can, you know, tightening them. Guys muscle them in, and then they pull out the grip screw bushing, and it makes a mess. And I won't even do them anymore. I just want to do trigger work and reliability work. But the more you muscle on them, the more trouble you have. Just clean them and enjoy them. Become a better shooter. Spend your time on. I don't know. It's you know, if it was a different field, like accounting, you could say, well, what can we do with accounting? You know, make a spreadsheet or whatever. And I can understand trying to figure that out on your computer. But guns, man, you're going to carry these things. You want to use quality ammo. You want to make sure the gun's worked on by a quality gunsmith. And if you want to try this stuff, you know, I get this question every day. I got a guy from Tennessee today, Paul from Tennessee. What can I do myself? And he wrote me a dissertation. All these things he wanted to do with his gun. And I just sent back, I'll pray for you. Because I'm a traumatized old man. And I still see at least 2 destroyed guns a month. And good people trying to do good stuff. And it's sad. If they want to do it to a Taurus or something like, I don't care. But if you're working on a Smith or a Colt or some quality firearm, try to find a professional. I know it's hard. Everybody builds AR-15s and puts trigger packs in striker fire guns today.
I don't know if this helps, but I bought a thesis so that I could file on it and not worry. Is that worth mentioning?
I like the thesis. I like those guns. A guy came in my shop. I had 2 calls. A guy came in my shop to do a show and tell yesterday with a thesis 9 and super, and it came with both barrels, both magazines, and it was a satin nickel-plated gun, and he was proud of it. And he bought it for like $460 or something. And a guy today told me he just bought one, the 2-barrel set, for $420 somewhere. And that's a smoking deal. And they make good guns. And they've copied the Colt Sear and the Colt Sear Spring. Important parts. Real important parts. You can cut them up all you want. You can try. You know, Halleck's Manual. I don't know if they still sell it today. But I have a video on trigger work and feed work. And I tell everybody everything I know. I don't keep any secrets. And if you want to go for it, do it, man. If it makes you happy. But I had a guy come in today with his gun in a Tupperware box, and I just told him, put it together. I need to see how it functions and what the trigger pull's like and if the safeties work. I'm not checking in a gun in a box. And so if you take it apart, you own it. And most guys won't want to work on it. But you may have the time of your life. And I do have videos out there to help. Quick question, brother. Are sear leaf springs a part that needs to be replaced? Like, absolutely not. You put a Colt sear spring in there, and I think Wilson's using the Colt sear spring now. It's got the cutaway and they're tempered. You put a good one in there, it'll last a lifetime. I always, there's 3 leaves, I always shave the sear leaf off the corner of it because it likes to drag on the frame on the single stacks. On like the para-ordnance type frames, they're square when they go up and it won't drag. But on the single stacks, their frames are cut like this, and the sear leaf likes to drag. And so you never need to replace a sear spring. Do they lose tension? If so, at good round count, swap them out. Do hammer springs also need to be replaced? No, but they're usually really stiff. And the older you get, the harder it's going to be to work the slide and the hammer. And I like to take a coil or 2 off them sometimes when they're tight. Mr. Ford, I'd love to hear your thoughts on practical differences between the factory commander length guns and the old customs like the Swenson Bobcat. I may have seen a Bobcat, I don't know. Other than looking cooler, is there any advantage Bobcat length? The shorter the slide gets, the heavier the spring's got to be, because the recoil spring actuator, the recoil actuator is the barrel. When the gun fires, it goes back that far with enough force to drive the slide all the way back and back forward. As the barrel gets smaller, it has more energy because the cartridge is the same. And so you have to beef up the spring. You beef up the spring, the slide velocity changes. It gets faster. Now the rounds don't want to come out of the magazine fast enough to get in front of the bolt. And you can make it worse with a shock buff, limiting the time that it has to work in. And then people want to take the 6-shot officer's model magazine and make it and buy the 7-shot, which is going to have a smaller coil diameter spring. There's not enough room. Look at a diagram, a schematic of a magazine when it's fully compressed. If you have a proper spring in there, there's no more room. And they have the collapsing follower that the Bell brothers started 40 years ago or something, and that helps. But you got to put a piano wire spring in there in order to fit another round. And even then, if the slide is down and you're doing a tack change, you can't fit. In other words, the slide's got to be back to get that 8-round magazine in there and drop that slide. And so I don't like reduced size 1911s. I know people carry them and they love them. They say their wives shoot them. When I shoot them, my hands separate, and I just think the recoil is too much for me. You know, maybe somebody else wants that much recoil. I don't. I would rather use a little 5-shot J frame, and that's what I carry with me when I walk. I often remind my customers that a recoil spring produces the same force in either direction. Paladin, very true. I just found your channel. I would like to know how to date a 1911. I've tried to date mine through the Colt website. Is there any other way? Get a R.L. Wilson Colt history book. I don't know. I know I already put it away. It's not on the table. It's not there. Get an R.L. Wilson history book. And I know you can find sites online. Sometimes it's tough to negotiate them. But you should really have the R.L. Wilson history book. And in the very back of it, it has all the guns and the dates. It doesn't have anything after 1978. And so if you've got something after 1978, you're going to have to go to another source. You can always call the Colt Historical Society and the Smith & Wesson Historical Society and get letters on your gun or have a discussion with them. And they'll tell you probably what you need to know, John. North American Arms is the other really rare World War II manufacturer. I think they only had a few prototypes because of manufacturing issues. They supposedly are not rarer than the Singers. Great video. Thanks, Travis. If you get Meadows' book, and I think the World War II book is cheaper, like $150, they have all the guys that submitted 100 guns to U.S. military, and I had no idea how many there were. There must have been a dozen at least. And so there was a whole bunch, but I usually only list or talk about the ones that were accepted for military contracts. So I really enjoy doing the questions and answers. Keep them coming, keep it lively, and let me know what you want to hear about next. I do prefer doing American historical firearms, but I'll probably end up doing them all. I'd like to do Marlins too. Have a nice night.